I'm Kimberly Dudick with my co-host, Sophie Moon. Welcome to Tuesday Talks. Welcome everyone to Tuesday Talks. People are going to start coming in right now. We'll give everyone a few seconds to come in. You'll see on your screen right now, me, hi, Kim Dudick. I have Sophie Moon with us also, and we have Representative Kelly Kortum, who's going to be our guest today. So we are going to give everyone a chance to kind of log in here. While we're waiting, whoever wants to, you can type in the chat box right now. Does anyone want to share something fun they did over Memorial Day weekend? Because we live in a great state, and I'll tell you guys one of the things I did, and I advise anyone doing it if you like getting outdoors. We went to Crystal Park, which is a state park that's by Elkhorn Hot Springs, kind of down past Phillipsburg and that area. And you can go there and dig for crystals, like quartz and stuff, and it's really cool. You can just go and dig and actually find your own lucky quartz and everything. So that was a really cool experience. Let's see, what else? Let's see, Rebecca went to Going to the Sun Road and biked. Did you bike up Going to the Sun Road? Because that always seems like a challenge to me, but I'm sure you did. Looks like Carolyn filed a ballot referendum on House Bill 273, which was the bill sponsored by Derek Skies and signed into law that dumped Montana's 1978 nuclear vote initiative. Yay! That was enacted by 65% of voters, and then they overrode it this year, even though voters wanted to be able to say yes or no if we wanted nuclear in our state. So now she's gonna be getting 30,000 signatures on it. So keep your eyes and ears open. If you want to put any sort of, Carol, if you want to put any sort of information about that, we can share that with everyone in the audience that how they can help you. And somebody said, where is quartz? Crystal, somebody, thank you. Crystal Lakes. Quartz hunting is at Crystal Lake, which and Crystal Park. It's actually a park, which is by Elkhorn Hot Springs. And you can go there and you're allowed to dig and it's really cool. Just take buckets of crystals. It's really cool. It's really cool. Like, I just can't say how cool it was. It was like digging treasures out of the world. It felt like you're an old time miner. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started now with our Tuesday Talks today. Hi, I am Kimberly Dudick, the CEO and co-founder of the Public Policy Institute of the Rockies. And I'm here today with my co-founder and CFO, Sophie Moon. You'll see her there on the screen. You also see with us our guest today, Representative Kelly Kortum. There he goes waving at you. We're hosting these Tuesday Talks to further the Public Policy Institute of the Rockies mission of bringing attention to under-addressed issues in Montana, letting you know some of the great people working on them, and also giving you an opportunity to learn how to be involved, and you can ask questions when you attend our meetings. Go ahead, and these talks are recorded. If attendees want to ask questions, you can post them in the chat box or the Q&A box. And towards the end of our talk, we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. We also record this and it'll be released later as a podcast, and it is also streamed on MCAT, Missoula Community Access Television, and it'll be on channel 189, so you can watch it live there, live recorded, so it's not really live. All right, so I'm going to introduce today our guest is Representative Kelly Kortum. Kelly grew up in Ekalaka, a small agricultural community in southeastern Montana. His family was working class, as most are in our rural and frontier parts of the state, and Ekalaka's strong community and neighborly culture made becoming a healthy adult all but inevitable. On his grandparents' ranch, Kelly developed an appreciation of hard work, as well as both the importance of self-reliance and having neighbors to call on. While in school and sports, he learned to value cooperation and teamwork, and as a teenager, locals began calling him to help them with their computer troubles as his reputation as a friendly problem solver grew. After spending the first half of his life in Ekalaka, he moved to Bozeman to attend Montana State University, go Cats, and has not considered moving again. He loves Bozeman and, of course, Montana. He quickly grew appreciative and then protective of Bozeman's growing technology scene, healthy local economy, and the diverse palette of cultural experiences that it provides. He works at Bozeman's Community Food Co-op as a systems administrator. Kelly was elected to represent Montana House District 65 in 2020. In the recent legislative session, he stood up for his constituents and all Montanans by specializing in the defense of voting rights, increasing access to quality internet service, and calling out harmful corporate handouts. Kortum and his spouse, Rebecca Stanton, rent an apartment in West Bozeman. Kelly, thank you so much for being with us today. It's nice to see you.
Thanks, Kim. It's great to be here. Great to see you too, Sophie. I'm excited to hear what everybody wants to hear about.
Well, so we'll just go ahead and start questions. If you guys have questions for Kelly, we have him here and he can answer your questions about the legislature, bills that were signed, bills that were vetoed, thoughts you have about things going forward. We're lucky to have Kelly with us, so make sure you throw those in the chat box and the Q&A box as we go on. So Kelly, tell us about the work that you do now outside of the legislature, and then why did you decide to run it for the legislature?
Sure. So in my private life, like many legislators, I work a normal job and then, take a couple of 4 months off for the legislature. So in my normal life, I'm a systems administrator. I fix computers, maintain the network at our local food co-op. I'm really passionate about our local economy. So it was a natural place for me to kind of land, and I've been there for 10 years. I decided to run for the legislature because I am very lucky to have grown up in Montana and had the excellent small town education I had. And I kind of feel compelled to pay it back to all those people that helped me become a functioning adult, to ensure that all the people that grow up in the state have the same opportunity.
So, how was the legislative session? This was your first term there as an elected official. What did you think?
It was very exciting. It was very rapid fire. There was a new problem to solve every day. It was really quite an experience. I will not say I'm thrilled with how everything turned out. I think it could have been much worse, but a lot of awful policy changes happen that will affect Montanans for years to come. So I have already committed to doing it again, despite still kind of recovering from the first round here. It's an intense atmosphere, we'll say.
Yeah. So you said, those policy decisions, like what could you highlight for people, some of those things that they should know about?
Yeah, I kind of specialize in the boring stuff that often flies under the radar. So I found myself speaking on a lot of, kind of the more mundane bills having to do with state administration, energy here and there, and local government. So the recurring theme in my realm in state administration, energy, and local government was power. The example I like to use is we don't let the winner of the Super Bowl change all the rules for the next season in the NFL. Why did the majority change so many policies for how our citizens vote, how they get ballot initiatives on the ballot, how when and where they can vote, when they can register to vote? Why did the legislature carve out power and take it away from local governments and give it to themselves? So I guess that's kind of the theme that I noticed this cycle, and dozens of bills to reference that passed, kind of supporting my claim there.
So what things were you able to actually get accomplished this session? Some of the things that you can tell us about that you felt proud of and that you felt like was, good work on behalf of Montanans.
Yeah, we stopped some awful bills. We saw a lot, despite kind of the promise that they were going to work on jobs in the economy. We saw a lot of social bills and kind of grievance bills from national talking points that don't really affect us as Montanans, but yet they came up. There was just a nonsensical attack on transgender people in the legislature this cycle, and it was horrific to sit through each of those bill hearings, because a lot of the claims came from nowhere. They were there are imaginary problems. And just hearing people talk about other people in that way was really disheartening. But we stopped a lot of those on the House floor, and that felt pretty good. We did a lot of work on maintaining some of our voting rights and ensuring students or people that were just turning 18 right before the election could vote. We stopped a couple of bad energy bills that would have kind of forced a local community's costs for adding service on all the ratepayers. So it would have been subsidizing folks that wanted a particular service. It's kind of, it's funny, now that I'm saying it, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically we were going to run a gas line out to Big Sky or small communities around a lake, and everybody was going to pay for it, except for, you know, directly those people in those communities. So we stopped a lot of that kind of corporate handout stuff, or at least brought it up and brought its attention so our Republican colleagues could say, hey, that doesn't seem fair. And that's where I felt most accomplished, was pointing out problems with policy in committee. I personally didn't pass any bills, and I'm not at all embarrassed about that, because the Republicans outnumbered us 2-1 on the House floor. It just was not going to be a good year for progressive policy. So I did get some attention on my internet bill to allow municipal broadband, or at least for the cities to own some of the infrastructure of the backbone of internet in their community. It succeeded on the House floor, and then on third reading it went down really hard. And I'm really proud of that, because it kind of shows you the power that lobbyists have to influence legislators.
No, go on. I would say that was agreeing with you. That is exactly what happened, is lobbyists got to people between the second and third vote.
It's important that Montanans know who is flippable by a big money lobbyist. And I think that was the best example this session of that. I also introduced some concepts that are growing in popularity, like ranked choice voting. It's a more fair way of running elections. The state of Maine and the state of Alaska have recently started doing it. It's pretty popular. I think I brought the first ranked choice voting bill, at least in the last decade, and maybe ever. And I was really excited to see mid-session a community pop up around that issue, and they're starting to organize for a more fair voting system. So those are what I felt really good about this session. And then just being part of the team. Sometimes there's some boring bills that folks don't want to talk about, and who's going to do it if I don't, kind of thing. So that was really fun, was getting really deep into an issue and finding the problems with it, and then explaining it either in committee or on the House floor.
So do you have concerns of any, issues that were left unresolved or not addressed by the legislature?
Yeah, a lot. I guess my big one being my internet access direction. There's a ton of money coming to Montana from the federal government to help expand internet access. We saw that bill, the bill that would adapt that money to Montana, come in the last week of the legislature. And it was a super long bill and very complicated, and it changed like 5 times in the last 5 days. It was such a fast moving process that I know we did something wrong. I can point to several spots where this federal money will go directly to corporations to build out their future profits, and not all Montanans are going to benefit from it. So I think we're going to really have to reassess that ARPA money for internet in the next session. And apparently we have to decide how to spend it sometime by the end of next session. We'll see how this rollout went. I know there's some great legislators also kind of in this mindset. Katie Sullivan did a lot of work on the internet. Emma Kirk-Carpenter helped us fix some of the major problems with it that would have just poured federal money into corporations with no accountability. So that's one we'll definitely have to address. You're definitely seeing all the news about the various lawsuits that have come out of all these unconstitutional laws. And I believe on almost all of those, on the House floor, somebody from our caucus said, this is going to cause a constitutional lawsuit. There's no way this law should pass. It's going to cost the citizens of Montana tons of money. And we were right. And now we're seeing all that playing out. I really hope there's a lot more attention drawn to how the legislature works and making sure we elect folks that want to be constructive instead of, what we're seeing the consequences of right now. I've probably got a couple other ones. We have some voting rights to defend and recover. For example, same-day voter registration was supported by majority of Montanans when we voted on it in 2014, and the legislature took it away. That's ridiculous. We'll go into that a little bit deeper when we talk about citizens initiative down the line, I think. I've got a whole rant about that if you're interested.
Well, go ahead. What about the citizens initiatives?
I would say the legislature overturned at least 3 citizens initiatives or altered them in a major way. And right at the beginning of our talk here, we heard about one that Carol was working on. House Bill 273 was a Derek Ski's bill that overturned the citizens initiative that said if nuclear power comes to Montana, the citizens get to vote on whether they want it or not. That passed in the 70s, late 70s, I think, pretty overwhelmingly. It just gives the citizens the choice whether they want to engage in this sort of energy production. And I personally am not opposed to nuclear energy, but I am opposed to taking away the voice of the citizens. And with really sketchy information, the legislature overturned that. And now nuclear energy can come into the state with just a few executive decisions instead of a polling of the entire state. So that was insulting. Same-day voter registration, another one, passed in 2014, pretty popular program. I think they said in the 2020 election, 4,000 people used same-day voter registration. Those are 4,000 people that in the next election will not be able to vote because of clerical nonsense. We have the right to vote, and all these fiddlings of our access to the polls is un-American and insulting to me. Back to the Citizens Initiative. We just passed, we legalized recreational marijuana by Citizens Initiative in Montana. There were 4 bills this cycle that, at least 4 bills just addressing the recreational marijuana, but there were several others that addressed how citizens initiatives work. In one of them, they're inserting a legislative committee into the middle of that process to say whether they approve of the citizens initiative or not. That is the legislature carving out more power that the citizens used to have and kind of putting their stamp on it before we even vote on it. That is putting the thumb on the scale, and again, just another undemocratic, unreasonable clawing away of power from the citizens. So power is the theme, and why are they changing all the rules now that they have more power is my question to the citizens of Montana.
Yeah, people should be concerned about that for sure. What did you see as some of the challenges that you saw in the legislature, especially in like the pandemic times? This has been unprecedented. So what were some of the challenges that you saw?
It was hard to have some of those. Sometimes you really need to have an in-depth conversation with a single person. And in past times, you could catch them in the hallway or walk over to their desk and kind of discuss an issue in depth. During COVID times, especially with a lot of us participating remotely, it was really hard to have those conversations. Even if you did, it was over the phone, so you didn't kind of get to know the person as you were discussing this issue. So it was a lot harder to collaborate with the folks across the aisle and my own caucus. I was really concerned about public participation because for the really important bills, we often have the gallery full above us. This cycle, it was much less safe to do that. I'm glad people showed up and cared, but I also, it put the staff at risk. It put the trending much older legislature and all the representatives at risk. So it was a good cycle to have awful things kind of pass unnoticed because there just wasn't as much conversation on the topic. I'm really hopeful next session will be better, not only kind of returning to normal, but the numbers hopefully are more balanced. So nonsense can't just fly through unchallenged.
Yeah. Well, everyone get registered to vote and make sure you vote early and make sure your vote counts. So Kelly, what are you doing during the interim, which is the time, now that the legislature is over until it starts again in the next odd numbered year? What are you doing with the legislature? Are you on any committees?
Yes, I am on the State Administration Interim Committee, which was my first choice. I'm very excited because that's where not only did I find the work really meaningful, voting rights, veteran affairs, pensions, stuff like that, but it was also the most civil, decent committee that I served on. Folks on each side of the aisle were very patient and polite, even though some awful stuff did pass. I guess I just like a good working environment. So I'm excited to be on that and further that work. I'm also once I was elected, I stepped down from the Gallatin Democrat Central Committee, but I'm really passionate about encouraging people to get involved locally, step up to be precinct people or run for the executive board or join a local nonprofit. That sort of work, getting people involved is really how I see us repairing some of the damage that has been done. Just get more good people involved, constructive folks that want to improve their community. And that's kind of my drive until the next election. Just increase participation.
If people want to be involved, you gave some good examples there with what they can do locally, serve on a board, run for office. How can they get involved in the interim legislative process?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one. I think now because they're still doing remote participation, if you have an issue you're passionate about, say state administration or something more exciting like energy, you can remote into the meeting, watch it, and testify on particular issues that the legislators are discussing. So that's a really easy access way of participating in your government. And hopefully with the support of my fellow legislators, I really hope they continue that during the next legislative session. Having folks from Culbertson or Ecolak or Eureka remote in to give their testimony instead of driving for hours and hours on icy roads seems like a much safer way of ensuring that Montanans' voices are heard. So I would say, let's hope for that during the next session, but in the interim, remote in, watch your meeting, participate if you are a subject matter expert. If you feel something's unfair, email your legislators on that committee or testify on a proposal.
And what is your contact information for people to reach you?
Yeah, I love interacting with the public. I responded to probably 4,000 emails this cycle. Yeah, that sounds about right. My email is the best way to contact me. It's Kelly, K-E-L-L-Y, 4-F-O-R-M-T, Kelly4mt @gmail.com. I would love to hear about any of these topics or any of the things that you're doing in your community. I'm also on Twitter at Kelly Kortum. That's just at my name. And I've got a Facebook that I post campaign stuff on. Again, Kelly4mt. Thanks for asking.
Oh, thank you. So we also just posted those for all of you who can see the chat box. Kelly's information is there in the chat box. So Kelly, thanks for answering those questions. We are going to turn this over now to have Sophie ask you some questions people have been posting. And anyone who wants to ask a question, now's your chance. So throw it in the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible.
Thanks for the introduction, Kim, and thank you so much, Kelly, for being here today and joining us. We have a ton of questions coming in from the audience, and if people have questions that they still want to ask, go ahead and throw them in the chat or the Q&A section. The first question reads, one of your fellow freshman legislators wrote, quote, "Nothing stunned me as much as watching legislators introduce bills to line their own pockets. The vape store owner who eliminated regulations for vaping products targeted at children, the landlords who tilted landlord-tenant laws in their favor, the trapper who increased trapping, the builder who outlawed affordable housing laws, and numerous other examples. Did you observe the same? What can we do to elect different people?"
I absolutely observed that. Because of the very stark difference in the amount of legislators we had, it was much harder to stop self-serving bills like that. And I agree with all of those examples. I think there's a couple more that were a little bit more intricate to explain, but definitely were to benefit the person's own business. That is not why any of us should get elected, to line our own pockets. I think it's important that when that happens, we as citizens point it out. Say, why is this person serving themselves when they are elected to serve all of us? More than 1 million Montanans. Why are they writing bills for themselves? You just have to ask and talk about it and bring attention to it, point it out to the press. It is not how good government should work.
Absolutely. Thanks for that answer. Next question. If you listen to statistics, like only about 20% of voters actually pay attention to the details of political debate, most Montanans don't get that disturbed about what happens in Helena. How do we more effectively educate our electorate?
That's a challenge that we're all going through right now. We see political advertisements and talking points from the national scene infiltrate Montana and take us way off the topic of how we run our state best. How do we educate on that? Again, it's all of us getting involved. It's being able to talk to your neighbors about politics or drill into an issue with them. It's about all of our volunteers and nonprofits and central committees putting in off-clock time to raise awareness of particular issues. We need more observant critical thinkers to really analyze and debate these really dense topics. And that all has to do with us getting involved and engaging our community. And each one of us that does that amplifies the effect. So I guess it's just not sitting out, having us all pay attention and be bold when you speak. Or it's a hard problem, but all those things that I just said, and I'm really interested to hear if you guys have any. Besides, like look at the work you're doing right now. Like, you're doing it. You are raising awareness of issues. You are broadcasting. Amazing. I just looked at your guest list from before. You've had some amazing guests on here. You are doing the work. You are getting involved, and everybody can participate in some way. So, we just gotta all lend a hand to make this place better.
Well, we definitely appreciate that little nod of support from you, and that's what we're trying to do on this program, is help people get closer to their government, closer to ways they can make a difference. So it's good to hear that that is working. Back to the conversation we were having before, which I think will be a conversation we continue to have throughout this episode, really about power in the legislature and how people interact with their government. We have someone who wrote in while you were responding to that conversation about the fur trapper, making it easier to trap, and like all these different legislators who are seeming to just line their own pockets or advance their own interests, their personal interests with the legislature. This participant writes in, is that not considered a conflict of interest? Is there any accountability for this beyond the ballot box?
That's a great question. And it's really interesting. In the legislature, you can have a conflict of interest, but as long as you say you do, that doesn't absolve you from voting on the issue or speaking on the issue. So I would say the corruption, or at least the conflict of interest laws in Montana, are so lax that it allows insiders to legislate and write bills for themselves or their special interest groups. So yeah, there's definitely some problems with the accountability in law, and that might be a place probably not immediately addressed, but something we need to keep pointing out until it's fixed.
Definitely. Next question. What is the reasoning behind offering the ARPA money to corporations instead of local communities or small, locally owned ISPs?
Ooh, I love those questions. Well, when a bill's written in 5 days, or at least, passed in 5 days, it's not going to be a high quality bill if it's super long. You need time, experts to analyze it, see who is missing out in the distribution of those funds, and get it repaired in policy. And it just didn't happen this cycle. One of the stipulations of that bill, I believe it was 697, House Bill 697, was the company requesting this federal grant money to build out internet networks has to provide 20% of the capital, and that capital can't come from other federal programs or state programs. So that means all the smallest ISPs, the little cooperatives that just serve a small community, or a mom and pop ISP, can't really participate without coming up with some major loans or capital somewhere. So the people with the big wallets can get 80% of their costs covered, and these small companies don't have a chance. That is something that we need to, if it's not, it will be apparent, I believe, in the next 2 years, and we have to address it in the next session. There's just, and that's just one of like 3 or 4 little problems with how that bill turned out. Just to plug my own idea here too, I think the internet is infrastructure, and we have to have cities incentivizing their local businesses starting up by providing them, a base level of guaranteed internet service. Now, who provides that service? It can be a private company, but if the city puts in that fiber background and then lets companies, compete for service in the area, it would both improve the competitive nature of the internet business and provide a local infrastructure that'll pay off for decades.
Thanks for going into the details of that for our listeners. Next question is a lot more kind of broad scale thinking. This listener says, to restore a more democratic and more progressive legislature, the Montana Democrats will have to do something it is not doing now to win seats in areas that Republicans now control. Is the Montana Democratic Party doing anything that will or can change this, to your knowledge?
I don't know. I have been much more in tune with the policy in the legislature since the election, and I haven't been participating as much in the state Democratic Party, but I do know there's a convention coming up Friday, the Rules Convention, where delegates from across the state will tinker with the Democratic Party's bylaws. But even more impactful than that, in a month, the state Democratic Party will elect their executive board, who really make the decisions on how they message to the people and how they promote the best candidates and that sort of thing. And I think there's a good opportunity there to have your local delegates elect some really good folks to move the party in the right direction as far as reaching out to citizens. I think our values are on point. I think our message needs work.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One question that I have for you, and anyone who has some more questions, go ahead and write in. We have the chat and the Q&A still open. But I'm just kind of curious, when you talked about the COVID restrictions at the Capitol, which were necessary and probably could have been more restrictive, when you talked kind of about the polarization too, I wonder, do you think there was a relationship between, not being able to go talk to your colleague who maybe is from a different party in the legislature because of COVID restrictions, not being able to have that really face-to-face contact? Do you think that increased polarization in our legislative session or had any impact on that, like this lack of relationship building?
Oh yeah. I would say it certainly impacted. It's really hard to track, but I know that some bills turned out worse because we just weren't able to communicate about them properly. I agree that the restrictions probably weren't restrictive enough. We had a lot of folks get quarantined or get sick during the session, and that hurts the efficiency of the conversations and passing legislation too. Yeah, it was a very unique session, and hopefully we'll never see one again. I'm skeptical, but that's my hope.
And then another question we have here, this participant is asking, what are your priorities moving forward?
I legislatively am still interested in protecting the citizens and the voters' right to participate in the government. This thing only works if we all have a say, and there's been a trend for 20 or 30 years on reducing the amount of power the citizen has. So defending citizens' rights to vote and participate in the process is huge. You'll always hear me ranting about internet access. I moved away from Ekalaka when I was 18. I had 28.8 dial-up. Couldn't even watch a video. And as soon as I got a quality internet connection, I became much more plugged into the world and our local goings on. So I will be ranting about internet for as long as my voters will keep me. I also liked that I got to specialize a little bit, like in local government, for example. I got to both learn and then advocate for local control. The session was not good for local control, but I learned a lot about how zoning works, how local citizens ordinances work, and I'm probably gonna focus pretty heavily on ensuring that boring stuff doesn't just keep flying under the radar and that we draw attention to it. And I say boring in a polite way. It's just less exciting than some of the things that you see on the news.
Totally. Well, thanks for giving us all those answers. We have another question here from another participant. They start out saying, when we need to do it all, there's this destruction of democracy as well as, the need to make policy gains for people. How do you think under that kind of pressure, we can encourage more participation from citizens across Montana?
Tough questions. I think things like what we're doing right now. People will get involved when they know there's hope and there's a reason to get involved. And by leading by example, by addressing the people directly, by putting constructive values out there to be debated and discussed, it takes leaders, and we need leaders from all around the state to step up and learn about the local processes so they can't be corrupted or misused by self-interested folks or special interests. So it's all every time, how do we fix this? I'm gonna bring it back to us all getting involved in launching nonprofits and talking to our neighbors and voting and supporting great candidates. It's just we're a huge community, and we have to think like that.
Great. Before I turn you back over to Kim for the final 4 questions, I just wanted to, I don't know if you've been keeping any eye on the chat, but we've had quite a few people write in just saying thank you for the service that you provided for Montanans this legislative session. And we definitely want to extend that thank you from our nonprofit as well. We have one participant here saying that they were your remote meeting coordinator this session, and it was an amazing opportunity. And they really appreciated being a witness to that and getting to soak in that information. We have another person writing in that they appreciate your dedication to citizen participation and saying, keep it up. So I'm sure that this last session was just crushing in a lot of ways, but I hope you know that there's so many people on this chat and in general who are just so supportive of the work that you're doing, and we couldn't be more appreciative that you joined us today.
Thank you, Sophie. Just a quick side note, the staff at the legislature were amazing. I have never worked with so many professionals that could, both remain neutral and also do their jobs so well. From the drafters to the meeting coordinators, it was just a phenomenal thing to see, because I've never worked in such a large enterprise, and to see these people just doing amazing work. That was really exciting to me. So thank you to all of them for their service.
All right, thanks, Sophie. Thanks, Kelly, for answering those questions. I have just one of my own questions for you. We had those questions earlier about conflicts of interest and people basically lining their pockets. From my experience in the legislature, there is what's called an ethics committee, which is a committee that only meets as needed. And that committee is actually supposed to look at the ethics of legislators when they're bringing forward bills like that line their pockets. It's my understanding once upon a time in some fairyland that actually worked in our state, but it was prior to my work, which started, 9 years ago. It's over now, but I was wondering, did you see any sort of an ethics committees brought for any of those bills, or any sort of discussion about that, about whether or not people were acting unethically when bringing these bills that personally benefited them?
I think the topic of ethics was absent the entire session. I do not believe that committee met. I know it was assigned, but I don't know if they ever met on any issue at all. So I would say that was largely ignored this session.
That's my experience also. I just didn't know if something may have changed. Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all the work you're doing and for talking with us today. So right now we're going to switch into 4 questions that are a little bit less formal and just designed to let people get to know you personally a little bit more. So first, what's a podcast you're listening to that you would recommend to others?
During the session, I haven't listened to one in a month at least, but during the session, I was listening to The Richest Hill on Earth, which is about Butte and the area and the rich history, we'll say, the last 100 years. I highly recommend local podcasts like Richest Hill on Earth.
That's great. So thanks for that. I actually listened to that too. It's a good one. Who is your favorite singer?
I right now, I'm getting back to my high school days. I'm listening to The Offspring, which is a punk rock band.
Yeah.
I've also had a retro kick lately, Led Zeppelin, Doors, that sort of thing. So all over the place, like most people, broad.
Nice. Where's your favorite place to go in Montana?
It's a tie between the ranch in Ekalaka, my grandparents' ranch, and Flathead Lake. 2 totally different sides of Montana, but both intensely relaxing and really beautiful, unique corners of Montana.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally. All right, last question. What is the best advice you were ever given?
Goes back to the themes, but get involved, step up. When you see a problem, don't wait for somebody to fix it. Address it yourself. I'm not outgoing. I'm kind of a shy person, but as soon as that advice gave me the bravery and the boldness to speak a little bit more, things just started happening, I guess. So yeah, step up.
That's great advice. Well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Representative Kortum, for joining us today, for talking with us about your work and your thoughts on all of that. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
It's been great. Thank you so much for what you're doing for our state and every other state, and just informing the citizens. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to both of you, and it's great to see you again.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much. And to everyone who's listening today, thank you for listening. We're hosting these talks to provide an opportunity for people to learn about the different people and organizations in our state, and to learn how that people can become involved in shaping their communities. You can reach the Public Policy Institute of the Rockies at PPIoftherockies.com, on Facebook at Public Policy Institute of the Rockies, Twitter at Policy Rockies, Instagram at PPI of the Rockies, and email at info@PPIR.org. If you want to listen to this episode again or any of the past Tuesday Talks we've had, you can find our podcast available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you listen. Feel free to rate, review, and subscribe. Let us know what you think. To keep these conversations going, what you'd like to hear about, please email us again at info@ppir.org. We would love to hear from you. And this also will be streamed on MCAT, MCAT, on channel 189, showing if you want to watch and listen to Kelly again. So thank you all for listening. We'll be back next month with another great episode. We do have one more Tuesday Talks in a different format coming up later this month. We'll be having a panel discussion as a ticketed event about the state of recreational marijuana in Montana. We talked a little bit about that today with Representative Kortum. So if you're interested in that, keep your eyes and ears open and join us in that conversation. So again, thank you everyone, and have a great day. Let's keep moving Montana forward together. Bye. Thank you.